I'd like to welcome our panelists today and those watching the Hangout. I'm Valerie Kibler, and I'm a journalism and English teacher at Harrisonburg High School in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I serve as the JEA Leadership and Team Building Curriculum Module Leader. Today we're going to look at a variety of ways that teachers have their student journalists build portfolios around the country, and hopefully touch on a hint or two that might help you out, whether you're a beginning journalism advisor or you've experienced many years and are looking for a change. One of the lessons in the actual leadership module focuses on helping you teach your students to compile a portfolio of their work. But today we want to explore how a few different advisors around the country also use a portfolio for assessment in their programs. We're going to talk about the requirements for entering the JEA Student Journalist of the Year competition next spring, something that it's not too early to start thinking about now, and frankly it's not too early for your kids to start even as their freshman year. We have a few likewise JEA members with me tonight and teachers, so let's get started. Meet the panel. We're lucky to have three really strong, experienced, and successful journalism advisors. Rebecca Pollard is the yearbook advisor currently at Heritage High School in Texas. She has advised all scholastic media in her career and is currently the Journalist of the Year Committee Chair for JEA. She worked hard to get that new program in place. So, Rebecca, you want to say a couple things about how long you've been teaching and all the different things that you've done there journalistically?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yes, I have been advising scholastic media for this is actually my 16th year. And in that course of time, I have actually done pretty much everything. So if it's in media, I've done it. Excuse me. So as far as portfolios are concerned, it is a valuable resource for you as a teacher, and it will help make your life a little bit easier as far as measurable progress for your kids along the way. And would also help just in general for showcasing the kids' work and what they can do.
All right, great. Great to have you, Rebecca. Sherry Edwards is the yearbook newspaper and online news advisor at Grosse Pointe North High School in Michigan. She has also advised the literary magazine and is the JEA editing curriculum module leader. Sherry, tell us a little bit about your school and what you do there.
For the past 4 years, have been advising all journalism there. I teach journalism all day. I was previously doing yearbook and English, and I've taught literary magazine at the middle school level. We have recently, in the last 2 years, launched a very successful website to pair with the newspaper, and we're working on developing the broadcast program at the school. It's in its infancy. I use portfolios extensively with my students, and I find that they are really fitting the bill for my professional development, my evaluation as well. So my administrators are fully behind the use of portfolios in all ways, shapes, and forms.
Okay, cool. That'll be neat to talk about. And finally, last on the panel this evening is Chris Wagaman, who works with broadcast newspaper, yearbook, literary magazine, and God knows what else at Prince George High School in Virginia here. He's the director of VAJTA and is the 2014 Dow Jones News Fund Journalism Teacher of the Year. His reign winds up here in a couple weeks. Chris, tell us a little bit about your school.
So Prince George High School is grades 10 through 12. So when I get them in 10th grade, there's a lot of work we need to do very quickly, I think. And part of that is starting them with their portfolio. And so as a first-year newspaper student, as a first-year yearbook student, as a first-year broadcast student, we get them started right away with writing reflections about the work that they do. And I think it's a great way for them not only to highlight what they've done, but also to kind of start the progress of how reflection can really help in the learning process. And then we see these portfolios go on to serve a lot of useful ends. I would say even if they don't have success being recognized with their portfolios, eventually at the collegiate level, they've provided a lot of resume elements to applying to different student media. So we've seen a lot of use out of them.
All right, so Chris, that was a great segue into the first question I had for you guys tonight. I want for you to just describe to our audience the actual assignment that you give your students. What are the intricate details involved with that assignment? And how do you assess then the final portfolio? How do you do it along the way? So let's go with Sherry first.
I'm sorry, me first?
Yes, you
Okay.
first.
You just broke up there for a second. I give my students a lot of leeway. I started doing portfolios as their formative evaluation and their summative, and now use it. It's 20% of their grade at semester and final exams, and it's in place of any exam period, like a formal exam that they would do.
Right.
I started, I would say, about 10 years ago, just doing hard copy portfolios with them. So they were putting together binders, and then we transitioned to a digital portfolio and a shared drive. In the last probably 4 or 5 years, it's been all Google Docs, and now I've got some kids who are actually creating WordPress portfolios. I do have the odd duck who will occasionally still do a spiral-bound notebook or something, a hard copy, but I allow them the flexibility to do what suits their needs. The reason being that I ask them to give me 5 to 10 artifacts around the things that they think demonstrate their learning. So it could be photography, it could be writing, it could be staff management, it could be personal organization and meeting deadlines, it could be business and selling ads, it could be coaching readers and writers, it could be developing better interview skills. So they really need a place where they can collect artifacts to support each of those things, and then they have to reflect on those. So the reflection is, I would say, about 60 to 70% of the grade, and I have a rubric that requires them to use language specific to whatever topic or skill they are proving to me, and that reflection piece is more important than anything else. So they can't shoot the moon and give me a million different artifacts. They've got to limit it to a few things, and then they have to be very specific in detailing how that shows growth.
And how many did you say that you have them do?
I would say between 5 to 10. If it's a photographer, 5 to 10 hard, but if it's if they're focusing more on writing, then it may just be 5 to 7.
Okay.
I usually meet with the kids in conference, and we come to an agreement as to how many they need to include.
Super. How about you, Rebecca?
Currently, I am using portfolios for my photojournalism kids. I use them in all different aspects of our media program, but right now, specifically to answer this question, I'd like to address it through photojournalism. One of the things that my kids are always doing is they're doing it a little at a time. We've already started, like for this current year, we are already doing things for the portfolio. So, you know, whether it be that they're taking specific shots of different things that fulfill the requirements of the goal of the portfolio itself, you know, be it they're just taking some portraits or they're taking some sports action shots, things like that. We do have that particular way of doing it, so then that way the kids kind of have some goals along the way of things to shoot. At the end of the year, when we're looking at everything that they've compiled along the way, in photography alone right now is what I'm really addressing, is it's really funny to see they get really frustrated at the pictures that they took in the very, very beginning, and they're like, oh, this just looks so bad, I can't put this in there. And I'm like, no, you need to put in the stuff that when you were a rookie or when you were, you know, just starting out. It's just as important as the great stuff too, because it shows that you've evolved as a journalist, and it shows how you've learned these skills along the way and how much progress can actually happen and how measurable and attainable it is in a year. So how we do it as far as the output is concerned, right now I've had them actually doing like iPhoto slideshows, but we've also done it where I've actually put galleries on WordPress or galleries online somewhere where they are able to utilize it as part of an online portfolio instead of just, you know, a slideshow that's on a DVD or a flash drive.
Interesting. I knew I wasn't going to input anything, but I have been reading my students' portfolio pieces, and one of my freshmen chose to write about her very first interview experience, and I could tell simply by reading that piece that she's an incredibly talented writer. It was way better than what she wrote for the paper, but her tone about being so scared to death to go do this interview on what somebody packed in their lunch and how she forgot to ask their name, when she goes back in 4 years and reads that, she will certainly see growth. And like Sherry said, it's going to be incredible to be able to show that administratively. All right, Chris, to you.
Yeah, well, just piggybacking on a lot of the different ideas. Number one, we do start off with hard copy materials. For our sophomores, it seems that's the easiest way to actually kind of collect what they've been working on. We actually start the WordPress side of things as a different project. You were talking about how the voice kind of comes through with some of the writing that they do. I actually had them start their WordPress side as more of a opinion type blog. And what happens is after they've kind of gotten the ins and outs of the WordPress site, whether they're reviewing movies or whether they're commenting on sports or whether they're doing some type of opinion piece, they feel more comfortable with WordPress after that process has started. And they become pretty well tuned into the idea of how to create a page, how to put photos here. And so then we sort of marry the two projects together sometime in the fall. And I think that the idea too about the looking back at their first pieces of work and how it develops is really important, because I think some people would say, well, you know, I don't really have to start telling our students to do this if the award's only, you know, granted to seniors. I think that is probably the wrong time to start, because if you can get them started as sophomores using a reflective process like the portfolio and a WordPress site, then you're developing maybe your next web editor as well through this process. So, you know, I encourage everyone to think about, let's start them right when they come on staff. Let's see the kind of work that they did right off the bat with their first photo portfolio, as y'all were talking about, and keep that going all through their 3 or 4 years on staff.
Yeah, I think one of the things that many young advisors, myself included, when I first started to do is we only had a few people who knew how to do certain things. We only had a few people who knew how to run the website, a few people who knew how to do design, and I learned quickly that the more people we could empower with that knowledge, just the better we would do as a staff. And so I think that's one of my tips for young advisors, is to get as many kids hands-on experience with WordPress or whatever platform you're using as quickly as possible. We've pretty much covered the things that I had listed there next to talk about, so I'm going to skip down to Rebecca. If you would outline the procedure for us for putting together our portfolio for the JEA Student Journalist of the Year project. What kinds of things do kids need to include? Does a student need to necessarily have all of the components that are listed on there? So just give us a brief overview, and then maybe the other two could comment if you've had students actually do a portfolio for that competition, how you have found that to be. So Rebecca, your turn.
Okay, as far as the procedure itself, I highly recommend everybody to look at the JEA website and walk your way over to the Journalist of the Year subpage that is within the site. And the reason why is because I have put some tools there for people to access, as far as how to actually put the portfolio together, how to organize the categories. What we've tried to do is we've tried to align the categories for the portfolio to line up with the curriculum as a skill set. So we would like a applicant to showcase their skill set. Regardless of the medium, what we hope is that at the end of the day, they have 11 skill sets that they can display or demonstrate or showcase, because ultimately, as a 21st century journalist, you have to know quite a lot. So, and that's all part of just the display and showcasing. So that's one thing I would recommend. As far as what those categories look like, you might have some photography that organizes under photojournalism, or you might have some notes, some reporting notes, like for example, Valerie, the kid that you were talking about, sharing her notes from her first reporting and interviewing assignment. That would be great for the reporting category in the portfolio for our contest. Things like that humanize the applicants and make them showcaseable, if that's even a word, to the judges. That is super important. So they want to see skill set demonstration irregardless of the medium, and then also on top of that, humanize yourself. And I think that that's one of the things that needs to come through in a portfolio, is to show your personality and to give those first impressions. As far as does a student need to necessarily have all of these components, I will say no. You can demonstrate a few things very well. I will say, just from my experience last year, watching the judges' scores and watching how they perceived the work, I will say that if you're good at many things, that is good to demonstrate. But ultimately, what made the candidates above the others, or put them apart, set them apart from the others, was the kids who humanized themselves, showed measurable progress. So they showed, you know, here I was weak, but then by the end of the assignment I was here. That was the one thing that really set people apart, regardless of how many mediums you could demonstrate that you could do stuff with.
Okay, Chris or Sherry, have you guys had students work with that project before?
I have, and I think that I'd like to, I'll just second what Rebecca said about having kids play to their strengths. I think it's important for them to demonstrate the skills that they have, but not to try to play up something that they may be weaker in order to show a balance, but really emphasize that area where you're really strong, because that I think they need to become an expert in one thing and really be able to demonstrate growth in that area is going to be easier than demonstrating small amounts of growth in other places. The more successful portfolios that I show my students, it seems that if you are able to show that you're a learner and that you have perseverance and you're willing to try those new things, whether they succeed or fail, that is ultimately more successful in journalism for them.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, I would add that on that same note that you know, some of our students look at some of the portfolios, especially at the national level, and they're overwhelmed with some of the involvement that some of these students have had at sort of bigger markets, I guess you would say, because we're in a very rural area. A lot of the journalism that's done in our community is actually done by our students and then sort of outsourced by some of the local media. That's how desperate some of the local platforms are. And I would say for those students, you know, you don't have to have interned at USA Today or Washington Post or done some special thing with ESPN. I think highlight what you've done well in your different areas to actually tell the stories of your community, because I think sometimes the idea of competing against students that maybe are in LA, for my students, you know, that would be pretty daunting. But I think they can show the kind of work that you can do in any area of the country if they do it, you know, well, and they do it with their heart and their passion in journalism.
Yeah, and I think that's such a shame. I want to echo what you said, that you know, I've had kids in Southwest Virginia, I've had kids in Harrisonburg, and they too feel like they can't compete with someone from California or Texas or someone who has a great program in Kansas. And the amazing thing about JEA programming is when we get to a convention, and I know that they've really worked hard to align all of the workshops with the curriculum so that they're labeled with the modules, and that goes along with the portfolio that the students are creating. So everything is kind of really being structured parallelly. Now that's not a word either, Rebecca, but anyway.
I understand completely.
Yeah, but when the kids get there and they see and meet other kids, they realize they are just as good, sometimes better than other students around the country, and it's a big confidence builder. But I still think it comes back to learning how to do this stuff early. You can't really wait till the last minute and throw this together and be successful for the JEA contest. And so I think the growth and the reflection part is so important. So what suggestions, you know, I see that I've collected 3 pretty experienced people here. What suggestions do you guys have for advisors who have never done a portfolio assignment for their kids before and just really don't know where to begin? What would you do? What would you suggest? Anybody?
Okay, well, let me add this before I forget it, because I thought this was going to be sort of like the final words of advice, so this will be my interjection here. I think that for me, because I see so many journalism students every day, that a lot of times I forget to have the one-on-one time to talk to the students as well, and that's one of the components of this portfolio building that should not be overlooked. that if an advisor thinks, okay, here I have this whole staff, and I really want to talk to these individuals about the work they're doing individually and as part of a staff, I think the portfolio element allows them to do that too. So in my portfolios, yes, I want to make sure that they're showing their best work and they're reflecting, but I also want to make sure that I'm providing feedback to them about how I'm observing them on staff in some element, so that they can get feedback from me, because I just can't seem to find time, each week to sit down with each one of them, each one of my editors. I wish I had that time, but the portfolio also, you can work something in there where you can provide that feedback one-on-one between advisor and staff member that I think really helps out the growth part of the portfolio too.
All right, Sherry.
I think that it's easy if you start really small. I'll use photojournalism as my first example. With my photographers, every Friday, pick a day, but for us it's every Friday, give me your best 3 from the week. Or if you do that every other week, give me your best 5 from the past 2 weeks. It gives them a place to start to collect those. It's much easier to do in small chunks as you go along, whether it's with mini deadlines or regular deadlines, bigger things. If it's 4 times a quarter or if it's once a week, collecting those things before it's semester or end of the year is so important, because they forget. They forget with the huge amounts of work that they're doing. Our newspaper publishes every 2 weeks, and so every 2 weeks the kids are reflecting on the things that went well, the things that went better than expected, focusing on how maybe their interview skills have grown, or maybe your lead writing has improved over the past 2 issues. For yearbook, every mini deadline that we hit, it's what module was really well done for you? What did you struggle with? How are you going to set some goals for yourself personally to improve? Because if they set those tiny goals, then they're looking for that progress along the way.
All right. And Rebecca, do you have anything you wanted to throw in?
They both covered it very well. The only other thing I would probably add is to weave it into part of your grading. If you naturally acquire the assignments through grading, then it kind of all starts to make it happen without you having to intervene much. So that would probably be my only other thing to add compared to what they were saying.
All right. And any final words of advice for the audience this evening?
Just jump in, start somewhere. It really, if you just start small, it's all it takes. So just one little assignment at a time.
There you go. That's the perfect ending. Thank you all 3 for joining us this evening, and we will see you guys again next month.